We need to be better about building those relationships because people want to do business with people they like.
We should think of our agencies as we have customers that want to stay with our agency as a whole because our entire agency and our entire staff nurtures those clients when they come in the door.
First of all, this is like burpees. I've never agreed that I wanted to do a burpee. I just do them. Like, we just have to get out there and do them. So here we are, guys, gathered up again. And we're going to talk about how we have some clients that are at 96% retention. And what we're going to do is talk about the 7 things that drive retention. So if you're like, oh, I want to have Kelly never talk about renewal reviews again, we're going to give you 6 other ways. Although my favorite is still the renewal review, and it will drive the best result. And I think you should listen if you have haterade on it. Apparently, when I spoke in North Carolina, somebody came up to one of our clients and said, can you believe she wants us to call every single client at renewal? That's ridiculous. And the agency was like, well, we are doing that and it's working really well. And that person just got up and walked away. They were that against renewal calls. I was like, oh.
I think it can also be overwhelming to think of if you're not in a good place or if you don't understand the process.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. I just think it's like, it's funny. And I'm like, have you done them? Do you know? Do you want to ask questions? Maybe like keep an open mind. But no, this person was just anti that idea. Like the world's worst thing was going to happen. So we want to walk through our 7 here. Does anybody want to tell our listeners the 7 ones we're going to go over real quick?
I can. So cancellation safe process, agency standards, wow customer service, sell on value, client nurturing, metrics and incentives, and renewal reviews.
Perfect. Stephen, would you like to take the first one?
The cancellation save process. Make the magic happen. You guys, when somebody calls to cancel, we have to talk to them. We need to have a conversation. We can't just say, okay, where do you want me to send the form? Because we can't be afraid of the confrontation. Just because they want to cancel doesn't mean that it's the right decision for them or they've made the right choice. We need to get more information. We need to find out what we could have done differently or done better. And we need to find out why they're wanting to leave to begin with. We have to have a conversation. So we need to know what that process looks like to the agency, and we have tools to help you define just that.
And I think with the cancellation process, we also have to have the intent to save it.
Yeah.
To say,
that should be important.
Bye.
No.
Have a nice day.
In some of our trainings, we talk about clients that we want to fire. And I'm like, but for each one we fire, we have to save 10 to make up for it, right? So if you're going to pick that one that you really want to go, then how many are you going to fight for?
I couldn't agree more. And I think giving your team the tools on what to say is equally as important because a lot of them don't know what to say.
Because they've already made a decision, so I can't talk them out of it. That's just rude.
I don't want to be pushy.
No, that's the wrong attitude.
I don't want to be pushy. They're breaking up with you, people.
Right. The relationship's over anyway. What's it going to hurt to ask a couple more questions? Let's do it.
Yes, I agree. So you need to have it written out, mapped out. And by the way, then you need to role play it. The thing everybody loves the most, right? Getting in and getting some role playing in.
Make it happen.
All right. Next up, we have our wonderful agency standards. So, Teresa, you want to take that one? You want me to take it? Do you have a preference?
I can do that one. I think agency standard is something a lot of agencies are missing out on. They just kind of say, hey, we don't want to write minimum limits, but they don't make an actual agency standard. And I think guiding staff on, hey, this is our agency standard. These are the liability limits. This is the minimum that our agency writes. This is what our comp and collision deductibles should look like. This is what the policies should look like. Then when a customer calls in and the customer's like, oh, I want state minimum limits, you could say, hey, one of our agency standards is this, and this is the reason why. It's because we're trying to protect you as a customer. So I think when we don't give our staff agency standards and they're just kind of winging it, they're making their own standards. So, they're using their standards and then, so Stephen's using his standards, I'm using my standards, Kelly using her standards, and they're all different. And then a customer calls in to get their policy reviewed by Steven, and Steven's standards are higher than mine are when I wrote the policy. And he's like, wait a minute, you got low liability limits. And then the customer's like, well, Therese wrote those limits. But if you have agency standards in your agency, then everybody's writing the same limits and you won't run into that issue. So it's a huge part of retention because you're actually showing the client that everybody in your agency is uniform. You all feel the same way. Your limits are going to be the same or higher. And you won't be able to, also the drama won't be there. Oh, Therese, why did you write this policy this way? Well,
I love drama.
Yeah, and it's, oh my gosh, that's one of the things I like about not
No
being
drama in the agency. We have enough drama at home, friend.
Yes. So the less drama we can cause by having agency standards in our agencies, hey, woo, yay, we checked off some drama and we gave everybody a standard of where they start at when it comes to writing policies.
Well, I also think it also tells the agents very clearly, we are walking away from them, people, if they don't do this. Like, it's not our cup of tea. Don't go try to jam it into your commission check. Like, this is not where we want to be at. Or if we're going to take it, we're going to fee it.
Yeah.
That's great, but you better charge that fee. Otherwise, you're not making any commission on this and go from there. So I also think, like, hey, if you don't want to write no prior, great. If you don't want to write somebody who's, is not going to go on EFT or ACH, and I know some states require you to still take other formats, that's fine. So you have to kind of look and say, like, who is our best client? Because once you bind them, you have to service them. And not every client is created profitable. True story. All right, I'll take WOW customer service. So you have to delight your customers today. And I think, it's amazing sometimes how we don't always identify what actual WOW customer service is. It's like the answer is we picked up the phone. And then
doesn't matter how we picked up the phone.
Doesn't matter. Oh.
At our agency, we return all emails and phone calls within 72 hours.
Wow. Okay. On a good day.
Because that's what good service looks like for us.
Yeah, it's just so weird to me because I just feel like, so many agencies actually don't, like, they process the endorsement, don't tell somebody what the new payment's going to be, or they don't do renewal reviews, or their idea of good service is we spent 45 minutes talking to the 92-year-old who was calling in to make their payment about the weather, and then we just didn't do anything to any of our other customers. So, like, WOW customer service is being proactive. It's being kind. It's telling your clients how to get the best result for their insurance. It's being a teacher. It is controlling that conversation. It is not just they come in and I give them Snickers bars and they make their payment.
Yay.
So I think that agencies need to define what good customer service is and not let it just go to everybody's own opinion of good service. Because who's going to be like, I gave really bad service today. I just want to, I was not feeling it. So I actually have one agency that I have to talk to the team because the manager is so frustrated because they listen to podcasts all day while they're supposed to be doing customer service work. So they have their earbuds in listening to podcasts.
One of your latest pet peeves, the earbud.
Yeah, the earbud thing. It's just, we were out to eat the other night and the guy who brought out our food had his earbud in. I was like, like I understand you're, he's not like the waiter. He's like the person who just like, they have the people who bring out the food. And he was a very nice gentleman, but I was just like, you're at work. You're at work. I don't know. Like it's a wild thing to me. It's wild. So that's not wowing me, by the way, when you take out my food and then like you have no intention of talking to me at all, just because you're rocking out. Maybe he was listening to How to Be a Good Waiter podcast. I don't know. It could have been maybe being judgmental. All right, Stephen, you want to take sell on value?
Yeah, I think that we need to make sure that we are building value in ourselves and what an independent agent is, because I know one of my biggest pet peeves is we don't tell clients what we do. We have to assume that they know everything that we know. So when we build value in the agency, we are building better relationships with our clients because they're getting to understand what we stand for and what we do. If I'm telling them that I take care of all the shopping for them, or that we have multiple markets because we are an independent agent, or that I have 20-some years experience and I've dealt with a lot of random and wild things, and I would love for them to try to shock me with their insurance story. then it's building a better relationship and building value on what we do with an agent. It's also reminding them to call us when they have a question versus calling the competition. Because a lot of people think that when they're calling us, we only have one option. That we only offer that carrier that we told them the quote or the policy that they bought. They don't always understand that we have other things to do or that we offer other things. So we need to be better about building those relationships because people want to do business with people they like, right?
No.
Yeah. They're also a little more forgiving when we have better value. And when we are getting them to really pay attention and share our stories and our knowledge and slowing down, it's helping the client understand again our value. We're not just another call center. We're not an insurance robot. We're real people too. And that's where we have to build the value of the relationship.
I also think too, when we talk about like selling the value, it's if you there's always that saying, if you sell on price, you have to service on price. So when they don't know all the things up front, then the only thing I'm buying you for is because you are the least expensive of what I found. So when you're not, then I keep moving, right? Where you have to establish that up front. And we have that saying too, people don't know, we don't tell them. So what Stephen was saying is fun. People know you've got multiple companies. How are they ever going to remember that? Like, I don't remember what I ate for dinner 2 days ago, let alone like so you have to kind of drill it into people's heads 100% for sure. Therese, do you want to take client nurturing?
So imagine your client as
My client.
It's growing. They're tiny little baby clients. They're new. What can we do to nurture that client? So I've heard a lot of agencies where the salesperson sells the policy, washes their hands of it, and just never talks to the client ever again. That is not client nurturing. What we need to do is build that rapport with that customer when we're selling the policy. If we're not going to be servicing it, we need to keep it for 30 days at least, if not more. And then when those 30 days are up, check in with that client in 30 days. Hi, I sold you your policy 30 days ago, just checking in, making sure everything's okay. You don't have any questions. And now, since it's been 30 days, I'm going to pass you on to this service person. Introduce that person, tell them their name, say if they have any questions or concerns, they can call into the agency and ask for that person or for the team. So you're kind of giving them the information of what you're telling them what's next, what's going to happen. You're giving them kind of like a buy when, but it's more like a schedule of what's going to happen as they become customers of that agency, what happens next, what they can expect. Even things like newsletters and educational stuff that you can send to the customer so they can read about the agency and read about insurance. So you're educating them and you're connecting them with the agency and with the agency staff. So they'll know the people that they're working with. So you're kind of taking that little baby client and you're building them into this flourishing, flowering client that will stay with your agency forever. I mean, I'm sure you guys as agents had the same thing where even when you changed agencies, you had certain customers that followed you wherever you go. I mean, I still have people calling me on my cell phone saying, hey, are you still with the insurance agents? Because I'm having trouble with my policy. And of course, then I have to direct them to the correct place. But you have customers that want to stay with you. We should think of our agencies as we have customers that want to stay with our agency as a whole because our entire agency and our entire staff nurtures those clients when they come in the door.
I love it. And then you just keep your name in front of them. Like they can't get referrals. They can't say, oh, I bought a boat, like unless they know who you are. And EFT and paid in full means a lot of times we don't see our agent name that often unless you intentionally put your name out in front of the humans, right? Metrics and incentives. So Stephen referenced this in an earlier podcast, right? Your team says, I give good service. We know that by retention. We know that by backlog. We know that by certain metrics that we need to be watching. So I like to say, hey, we could be giving the greatest service and have a bad retention rate. That means we're not giving the right service. So the team needs to know it because otherwise we all feel so much. There's so many feelings in insurance. And I think we all know how I feel about the feelings. I'm glad I don't own them.
Feelings in the B word.
Ugh. Right? Like, I feel like such a blessed person to really not have feelings. Every now and again, I get angry, but that's about it. Blows over. And then we have to incentivize people, right? So I think if you think about service team members, again, this is where I feel like service and retention are two different things. life cycle retention, whatever you want to call it, they should be compensated to keep that book. And they should be compensated to go ahead and grow that book. And I'm not saying like you're paying, crazy amounts of money, but part of the compensation strategy has to be performance-based. Because if you have someone that's not retaining, then that's not good. And we talked about last, podcast about how unfair it is, about how hard it is to track retention. But just because it's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, right? Like people get frustrated, give up, and they don't track their retention, which is garbage. If I'm being incentivized, I'm going to make sure all those cancellations are correct because I don't want my name up on a board and I don't want the metrics to show that I'm losing all these policies and be like, that's a rewrite, that's a rewrite, that's a rewrite. Like, no, clean up your book and then we'll know. And I guarantee you within 90 days, you will have a pristine, sexy looking cancellation report that's accurate as long as people have some skin in the game because I don't want their numbers shown on a big screen.
Yeah.
And so don't be scared to show people's numbers. Don't worry about them being perfect. They aren't perfect until your team is ready to embrace it. And they won't embrace it most likely until there's some skin in the game for them.
I just want to say that as an agent that had an agent owner that made us like write down all of our numbers, we had to write down everyone we spoke to every day. We had to write down all these. I hated it at the time because it was like micromanaging. But I can tell you, I learned more from that agency than any other agency that I've worked for because they looked at the numbers and they shared the numbers, and numbers don't have feelings. So you're looking at it and you can't argue them. So, even though numbers can be scary, some people are scared of feelings, some people are scared of numbers, but numbers are facts and they tell the truth. And when you look at them, you're like, oh, yeah, I've got to fix that.
110%. Also, too, I think on the metrics front, some people might not like the fact that you show metrics. That's why you show them. Oh, Steve and I've had agencies push back and be like, it's public shaming. No, it's just statistics.
Right?
No, it's the truth. Now let's do something about it and let's get going, right? Like,
you guys are bullies.
We're terrible humans.
I also, like, anytime you're starting something new, you give it a rollout period where it's like, hey, when this comes out, we're just going to look at it together. You tell me what's wrong and how we can fix it, right? Like what Kelly was saying before, like, I'm going to give you a chance to show me that this is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But at a certain point, then accountability steps in. So it's the soft roll. And then it's, okay, now we're here.
So, don't, yeah. And by the way, like, so here's the funny part about metrics. They exist in the background, whether you see them or not. Like, this is like when you avoid weighing yourself because if you had a rough week, that whatever I weigh, it's what I weigh. It has nothing to do. It's just now that I know what I weigh. And maybe today I don't eat chocolate cake for lunch. Or if I do, I fully do it with all the data points necessary to make it amazing. So the number's a number, whether people know it or not. Just bring it out in the open and you will see people adapt and change. And then the last one is my personal favorite, the renewal review, right? Like, don't care your opinion on them. They freaking work. I don't think we have any agency that's committed to it. In fact, I talked to an agency that we launched it twice with. The first time just didn't really stick. The second time he had a better team. They've taken to it. They've been doing it for 6 months. He literally goes, I am literally like, I talk to my friends in this market. He goes, we don't have their problems. I'm like, nope, you don't have their problems. So this guy started doing it 6 years ago. So that trust is built up with the clients. And I don't think that we talk about that nearly enough, like the value of that and the less pain that you have. Renewal reviews are part of it. There is no good time to start a renewal review program, right? Like, I think agencies are like, when we're full staff, when the market's not hard, when we're done with this, when it's not summer, when it's not too hot, when it's not too cold, when my team agrees that they want to do it. Like, first of all, this is like burpees. I've never agreed that I wanted to do a burpee. I just do them. Like, we just have to get out there and do them. And if we do them, all works well. And you have to have enough trust and faith that contacting your customers, because this is another big pushback I get, which is, well, if we call our customers at renewal, they might leave. I'm just like, okay, let's go through this again. What you're really saying is you don't have faith in your team to have a hard conversation. So you'd rather call them at some random time throughout the year, clean up their accounts, and then they get delivered a freaking fat rate increase. Why don't we just teach them how to have a hard conversation? And they say, no, they won't know what to do. And I go, that's why you're going to train them with our renewal review call program so that they know what to do. But if you have the type of people that are running your retention team that don't know how to have a hard conversation, talk about that renewal, then you're right. And that's why you need to train your team.
Mm-hmm.
So these are our 7. Can you guys think of any other ones we missed?
No, I think it's pretty comprehensive.
So so I shouldn't say that. The cancellation save, agency standards, wow, those are all things you can do right now, right? You could go in tomorrow and start talking to your team about how to save a cancellation. You could put your agency standards in right now. You could train your team on WOW customer service. We actually have a whole online training for WOW customer service if anybody wants it, that you could purchase and start training your team now. The sell on value, if you start selling now, you won't see that hit your retention for a while, right? The client nurturing takes time, right? So the first email they get, they're not going to be like, wow, I'm absolutely going to stay. The metrics and incentives are going to take time to get right, which is why that's in our long-term strategies. And the renewal reviews do take some time because you're lagging, right? So you'll probably see it click through about 90 to 120 days after you start doing it. And then you'll start to see everything kind of come into place. So there are short and long-term strategies, but bottom line, if you want to bump your retention, you just got liquid gold today, people, on this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Liquid gold. Any final retention thoughts?
Take it, use it, don't take no for an answer.
Bam.
I think everything we do kind of rolls up into these. There's so many different things like customer appreciation days. There's so many little things that we can do that fall into these categories. And I think people are scared of them because they don't really dig in deep to understand it. Like the renewal reviews, when somebody hears about it, calling every client, I think they don't know the process. They don't know the details. So they're just like, I'm not doing that. And that's why they do that. They have an initial reaction to something they don't understand. And I think if we slow down, we start to implement these into our agencies, we'd be amazed at the amount of retention we end up, the increase in our retention because of the strategies we put together and implement today.
Just do it like Nike. All right, everybody. Next retention podcast is all on statistics and retention and how valuable getting your retention up is truly to an agency. We will see you all later.